over the span of 36 hours, Kamala Harris was endorsed by everyone, basically. Also managed to amass enough delegates to win the nomination at the National Convention, and raised an absolutely absurd amount of money, even by presidential campaign standards.
Josh, are you my mom? Because it appears you watch MSNBC religiously with giving us all those statistics.
I did not get any of that from MSNBC. I also am not your mom.
Okay.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
We are back on the Wedge Live podcast with Wedge Live chief political analyst, Josh Martin. Minneapolis has a new police contract just approved, making Minneapolis police officers top 3, top 4 highest paid in the state of Minnesota.
Yep, that's right.
Higher than a lot of other departments around the country. A lot of big departments, like I think New York City is one.
Yeah, very excited to talk about the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Clearly the biggest news of the past few weeks.
It is. We are using the police contract approval as an excuse to get together here today with microphones and cameras and broadcast to you our thoughts about the BET, which is what we really care about. Also, Taylor Dahlin is going to join us to talk about vacant buildings. That'll be fun. Taylor has become a vacant building activist in recent weeks. But let's get into the police contract, Josh.
All right.
Should we say anything else? Rookies will make more than $90K a year for MPD.
Well, so the way this contract has been talked about both in the council, media, and in outside parties is it does have substantial pay increases for police officers. The theory being that will help with recruitment and retention. Can argue over to what extent that's true, but that's the argument there. And then that'll therefore help us with replenishing the depleted ranks of MPD. Some of the other big talking points, of course, is that the contract does include what I think most people agree are some pretty important changes in regard to staffing flexibility and civilian investigators, things of that nature. And the big question there is that trade-off of the cost worth it for what we're getting out of it? And there's some disagreement on that.
Yeah, so the way it has been phrased by some council members is we're trading historic pay increases for some temporary gains when it comes to the staffing flexibility and the ability to hire civilian investigators. Who knew the union could stop you from hiring civilian investigators? I don't know. Most people probably don't realize that. Like if the city wanted to hire in their police department, people would just like review camera footage, stuff like that, where you don't have to go out into the field with a gun, risking your life to deal with dangerous situations. Just as an investigator, like maybe you're doing a whole bunch of online stuff. You're looking at people's social media. You're trying to track down a certain person. That doesn't require a cop to do it, but apparently the union can block the city from bringing in civilians if they want to. And that is one of the things the city won in this negotiation. Another criticism is it's coming as a part of a letter of agreement, which exists outside the police contract. And that letter of agreement expires just like the contract expires, but you haven't actually won it as a part of the contract. It's a separate document. So temporary gains for permanent pay increases has been the line against it.
Was very concerned to see that many of the changes that were brought forward in this contract that I supported, and I know a number of my other colleagues did as well, they're all temporary changes. And to me, I don't see temporary gains for permanent raises as progress. The contract presented the administration the opportunity to clearly define coaching and to codify it as a form of discipline as to avoid any further misuse of it. For those arguing that the contract is not the place for it, I would also argue that considering the unique situation Minneapolis is in our documented history of city officials ignoring the misuse and abuse of coaching for decades, it absolutely should have been in here. And I know a lot of residents agree with that.
So I don't disagree with approving the contract. That's a weaselly way for me to phrase that. But I can say that I feel like sick to my stomach about approving pay increases for an institution that I still have a great deal of resentment towards in the Minneapolis Police Department that I think has put us through hell. And so I'm constantly thinking about how policing is maybe it's not the only profession, but it feels like it, where the worse you fuck up, the more handsomely you're rewarded. Just deep frustration. Are you feeling that frustration, Josh? I feel like a lot of people are feeling that way.
Yeah, I certainly feel that frustration as well. I myself submitted some written comments where I did kind of with deep reservations express my support for the contract, and in that really? I expressed some pretty strong criticism of MPD and how not enough has changed since the brutal police department that murdered George Floyd and led to our city being on fire. But I think I was in a similar place where a lot of the council members may be, is that I think it's unfortunately the best contract we're going to get. So if my understanding is that if the council didn't agree to this, it would have gone to arbitration. It seems very possible if that happened, we would lose some of the reforms that we negotiated in the contract, and there's no guarantee that we would have any better an outcome on the economic side.
Yeah, the way Jeremiah Ellison phrased it is he was characterizing something he'd heard from an ex-council member, the best contract that we've had in decades. And Ellison was not disagreeing with that, but he still voted no.
I was talking to a former council member recently, and they agreed that this is probably one of the better conditions that the contract has been in front of a council in decades. And unfortunately, no fault to our staff, I think that the bar that we set out to clear was incredibly low. We heard from a former MPD officer during testimony who was in favor of the contract say that one of the mistakes the city's made historically was to give over managerial authority to escape having to do pay increases. And so we gave over our ability to manage the department until all of a sudden we find that the contract's essentially managing the department. I think that's the situation that we've been in. But also I've been on this council long enough to feel that this kind of incrementalism is just not what we can accept. We need bigger swings than this. I truly believe that. And
maybe he's right, but I don't know that we're going to get bigger swings until potentially we have a new mayor. Because while the council has the power to approve or reject the contract, they don't control the people that are negotiating terms for the contract. They all report to the mayor.
Yeah, it doesn't work how you would think a negotiation, like the council's role is really difficult to wedge into a negotiation process because the union has already approved it. Like there's an agreement between the mayor's administration and the union. And the council just gets to say yes or no to that agreement. Right. And if the council says no, then it throws everything up in the air again. And it doesn't lend itself to the council playing a meaningful role. And if the council threatens to hold it up, like happened in this process, because there were concerns about how to pay for it, that's the thing. The biggest concern here, the biggest hang up seemed to be, despite what the mayor's friends said about our DSA-aligned city council, was how do we pay for it? And are we going to gut the public safety programs we approved last year, we being the council, or are we going to find some other way, which appears to be the convention center rehab budget is where they found the extra money to do it?
Yeah, and even several of the council members who were supportive of the contract were not a fan of the mayor's proposal to pay for it by cutting all of the funds for, or I shouldn't say all, but a very substantial portion of the funds for non-police alternatives that the council had just supported in this last budget negotiation. And they worked very hard and found another solution, which they did pass on a fairly narrow vote, one that is not veto proof. So it'll be interesting to see how Mayor Fry reacts to that.
I mean, he's getting what he wanted. I think everyone calling for people to come together and have a united front on public safety should maybe welcome the fact that you got your police contract approved, and all the council was asking in return, the majority, the 8-4 vote, is that you not cut public safety programs that are their priority. It seems like a totally reasonable thing to be asking, so I would hope nobody's going to veto that.
I think the budget resolution vote was actually 7-5. The contract was 8-4, and the budget resolution vote was 7-5 because Koski voted against that.
Okay. The city has a big budget. Find the $6 million somewhere. What we're paying for here is raises for MPD. It's been a little bit of a bait and switch to say we can't afford these programs that were approved last year. Like, if you think the MPD contract is as much of a priority as you say it is, you can find the money to pay for it. And it shouldn't be at the expense of other public safety programs.
Well, and it's also interesting given like Mayor Fry's public messaging has been both and for so long.
Right.
I guess I'm a little confused on where the both and the and is going, since this is now like the third or fourth time he's tried to use like all of the public safety money to pay for police raises.
I think what he meant by that is we're going to both give MPD historic 21% pay raises, and we're going to pay for it by gutting the and.
There you go.
That's what he meant by both and, I think. So there's been backlash. I don't know about you, Josh, but I live entirely on the social media platform that used to be known as Twitter. Right. And so I felt bad for Council President Payne, Cashman, and Chowdhury. Not that I saw a ton of this, but like I posted some clips of them speaking on it. They got some backlash. People are just very upset with them, that people feel betrayed. So they've been on the receiving end of some mean tweets. And as everyone knows, that's the worst thing you can do to a public official is a mean tweet. I think there was consensus, even among progressives who didn't vote for it, that like management needed to have responsibility to implement policy. Like reform doesn't really belong. Policy reform doesn't really belong in the contract because you don't want to surrender that power to a piece of paper. You always want your chief and your mayor to have some authority there. I feel like everyone agreed to that. Am I right?
I think that's right. From what I recall, most of the council members were not so much criticizing the provisions of the contract itself. They weren't saying that these changes that the city had fought for were bad. They were just saying that they weren't enough.
Right. And also, I feel like an acknowledgement that staffing for MPD, we have a police department, and we're going to. It's required in the charter. And it's not currently staffed to do all the things that we're asking it to do. Some agreement there. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I feel like there's some consensus there. Do you think so?
I think so, yes.
More comments from Ellison, who I quote because I feel like he is, if I was going to have somebody be my lawyer, any council member defend me in court, it would be Jeremiah Ellison because he makes the best arguments. So that's why I'm continually going back to his words. The police contract has historically been whatever it is you need politically.
Certainly been true in my time in office, has been that the contract has been this space, this political battleground, quite frankly, that says that, whatever it is that you need as a community, we can do it in the contract. So a couple of years ago, it was, hey, look, reforms, the blocks of reforms of the contract, right? And when we sort of reached a point where people started demanding that, it was all of a sudden, actually, this isn't the appropriate pathway. There's other ways that we can do this. There's other ways that we have done this. Right now, I'm hearing this correlation between the terms of this contract and staffing, the terms of this contract and morale, the terms of this contract and the reputation of the department. And if this contract passes, and if and when staffing is not resolved by the contract, I'm sort of curious to know what will be sort of the next frontier, what will be the next sort of Schrodinger's contract that we will debate, that it will solve, that it ultimately does not solve.
I think that there are problems that the Minneapolis Police Department has that go beyond pay. People are looking, I imagine police officers are looking like anyone else about their long-term career. And if working for a damaged, nationally decried police department might not be the best choice for your long-term career compared to a police department that doesn't have those problems. And getting paid a little bit more might be worth it, it might not. So we'll see how this goes. I think it'll help. I think people generally like getting paid more money than not.
Right.
But I don't think it's going to be a silver bullet and we'll solve the MPD staffing issues.
There's this factoid that I saw in one of the articles about this, that like a quarter of I don't know if it was a quarter or a third, something like that, are going to be eligible for retirement in the coming years, a quarter of MPD officers. And I am continually frustrated that there's no like public analysis. Maybe they have done this analysis, but I don't have confidence because for the longest time they weren't, and maybe they still aren't doing exit interviews to a satisfactory degree. But like, what is the demographic profile of an officer who left? We've heard so much about the 300 or so officers who've left. Like, how old are they? Where were they in their career? Was it all a bunch of them who had like a couple of decades still until they got to retirement? And have the ones who stayed, are they simply the ones who just had to eke out those last couple of years to get to their retirement, and that's the only reason they stayed? I just feel like that would explain a lot, and at least publicly, I don't feel like we have gotten a real good explanation for who's leaving and why.
I think that's a really good question. I think it's one that we do need to dig into, because if people are leaving or will soon be leaving because they're reaching retirement age, as opposed to people are fleeing to take other jobs, those are different problems that we need to solve. If it's the former one, then we need to lean a lot more heavily into recruitment, because a lot of the current officers will be leaving one way or another. Whereas if it's more that people are leaving for other jobs, then the focus needs to be more on retention. And I think those are related problems, but not entirely the same solutions.
And when they throw out stats like a quarter of the officers are eligible for retirement in the next few years, like, did the exodus cause the average age or average tenure of a Minneapolis cop? Did the exodus cause that to go way up? Like, are we losing just a ton of younger officers who couldn't imagine sticking around for 10, 15, 20 more years? I don't know. I will also play some audio, some wise words from Council President Payne.
We had a history of a toxic, racist police department because we had a broad community that was willing to look the other way. We need a majority of voters in this city to start paying attention. We need a majority of voters in the city to start having a more sophisticated conversation, and not just to boil it down to pro or anti-police. This is not about that. This is about people living in a city where you can thrive, that is just, and where we have joy. Joy's been stolen from us, for a lot of us, especially those of us who carry marginalized identity.
A more sophisticated conversation. We need a majority of voters in this city to start paying attention, to start having a more sophisticated conversation and not just boil it down to pro or anti-police. I feel that so deeply every time I read the All of Minneapolis newsletter and hear about our DSA-aligned city council's determination to plunge this city into chaos by abolishing the police, which hasn't happened. It looks like your DSA-aligned city council voted for historic pay raises. Another thing I noticed from Payne and Chowdhury specifically was calling, it's like, this is a paraphrase, but you got your pay increases. Now we need some accountability for the people who bring accountability to the police, the mayor and the chief.
There's been a 180 shift in how this administration talks about the role of the union as it relates to reform. The reality is that management has always had the authority to reform this department. They either just chose not to do it or just were not able to do it because they just were not dedicated to seeing that kind of change. And so we need to hold this administration accountable. We do need to create that roadmap of what that looks like. And accountability needs consequences.
And was stated over and over again, and what we should do is hold management, the mayor and chief, accountable. And I want us to figure out what that looks like as a city council and how we do that, a real plan.
I don't know what that mechanism will be on the part of the city council, like how they hold the mayor and chief accountable for the performance of the police department, but they were calling for it. So I am curious to see what they have in mind for that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see that as well. Of course, ultimately, it'll be the voters who hold the mayor accountable.
Yeah. I'm feeling more and more like the chief is disposable. Every time I hear either the chief or like Rainville say, like, it's on you, chief, to bring us these reforms. Like, I understand what they mean. I'm not trying to be obtuse about it, but police chiefs are so disposable. We would hear all the time from Arredondo about how, like, police chiefs have a shelf life. It's like 4 or 5 years is the average, and they're gone. We're a couple of years into what's his name, O'Hara, by this point. Like, he's not going to be around forever. You need to build an institution that can sustain constitutional policing beyond his tenure, because making it about personalities just irritated the hell out of me when it was Arredondo. No matter how you feel about O'Hara, I don't like it now because they're going to be gone one day. Are you ready to talk about the BET, Josh?
Of course, we're really here to talk about the most exciting topic.
I'm getting old. I can't even remember these people's names. Steve Brandt, one of our elected BET members, had an idea. He feels very passionately about it, to expand the BET. Currently, there are 6 members, 2 elected from the public, just regular people like you and me, who get paid a very, very modest amount to go to monthly meetings and to approve bond issues and once a year set the maximum levy. Have I explained the BET correctly, Josh?
That's basically right. They approve bonding projects for the city, and yeah, they set the maximum levy for the different branches. It's not really the right word, but of government in Minneapolis, the council and general budget, the park board budget, and their own budget. Now, they don't determine what the budget is within that. That's up to the council and park board to figure out, but they set what the maximum amount is, and generally the council's total budget is exactly that maximum amount. Right.
So the mayor proposes a budget and he's like, this is the levy, and the BET can go, no, it should be higher, or they can ratchet it lower too, right?
They can go lower. They can approve what the mayor proposes. They can also go lower or higher. I don't think they ever have gone higher, but they could.
They could if you elected some radical DSA aligned BET would totally take the maximum levy higher. So they don't have a ton of power, but they can cause trouble if they set their minds to it, I think, is a good way to put it. And Steve Brandt, because this body has 6 members, he's like, well, we've had a couple of tie votes or near tie votes on some consequential things, like how to save the city money on our, like taking out loans at a certain interest rate, basically not loans, but you get the point. Basically interest rate stuff, ways to save the city some money. And there was a tie vote on that. And he must have been so frustrated. He's like, we can't have 6 members in these tie votes. We need to add a 7th member and we could decide this like adults. And so he's got this plan to expand the Board of Estimate and Taxation to 7 members, adding a 3rd publicly elected member. So Samantha Pree Stinson and Steve Brandt are the current publicly elected members. In addition to the mayor, 2 council members, a member of the park board. Is that all of them?
Yes.
And so adding a 3rd publicly elected member. Josh and I, we were at the Charter Commission Amendment Review Committee where they discussed this, and we were blown away. We were blown away by the conversation because we agreed with nearly everything that was being said. It was astonishing to us. Hello, Taylor.
Hi.
Do you mind if we wrap up our BET conversation before we go to you?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this would go right to me, so.
You know how Josh and I love to talk BET, so who knows when we'll be done.
Okay, how do I get out of here?
You can mute. You can mute and watch. Do you want to watch? You
perfect.
watch and listen.
Yeah, I'll learn something here.
So exciting for you to hear this before it airs to the general public. We were in agreement with nearly everything that was being said by these charter commissioners who I personally have a burning hatred for. Not really, but they piss me off a lot. Ginder was like, the BET shouldn't exist. These are paraphrases again. This is a job for the city council. Yeah, he's right. Clegg said, we're the only city in Minnesota who still has a board of estimate and taxation. There's only 1 or 2 in the entire country. This is for the legislative branch. These budget things, just why can't we do it that way? 3 public members could veto, this is Clegg again, could veto the mayor and city council. Public members in the park board shouldn't be able to drive the bus. City council members are well vetted and run significant campaigns. People know who they are. BET members are minor candidates. Clegg again. Council and mayor are closest representatives we have to the people. Not appropriate to have minor candidates overturn decisions on finances, debt, and taxes. Couldn't agree more, Barry Clegg. The BET is just a recipe for crackpots making trouble. And we know this to be true because Carol Becker is from the BET. The whole reason we have Carol Becker in our lives is because she spent how long, Josh? 2 decades on the Board of Estimate and Taxation?
It feels like it.
Yeah. And
I don't know if that's actually true, but it feels like 2 decades.
It felt like so long that we were subjected to Carol Becker. And it wasn't because Carol Becker is beloved by the people of Minneapolis. It's because nobody else wanted to be on the BET. It's not competitive. And she's got her small fan club, but she would not get elected as city council member in her ward, let alone, I don't think she'd get elected to park board, which is a home of other crack pottery, but not as bad. Josh, can you explain what you were feeling at the end of that Charter Commission committee meeting?
Yeah, so I walked into it having a slightly different perspective, as you recall from our last conversation on this topic, where I'm on board with abolishing the BET, but I was like, well, if we're stuck with the BET, we might as well have a tiebreaker vote, right? But I think Barry Clegg and some of the other charter commissioners convinced me, no, if we're stuck with the BET, doesn't mean we need to make it worse.
Yeah.
That right now the council and the mayor need to collaborate with the other members. And that's preferable to having them being overridden by these minor candidates. There was, I think in retrospect, I don't think we should necessarily be surprised that the Charter Commission felt this way, because the Charter Commission did, not that many years ago, well, I guess a fair amount of years ago, but the Charter Commission did have an attempt to abolish the BET. And many of the members of because there's not a lot of turnover on the Charter Commission, many of those members are still on the commission, including people like Barry Claggett. What did surprise me is not that they hated this idea, but that they were so vocal about it and shut it down so quickly.
Oh, yeah. They really hated it.
Normally, when the Charter Commission doesn't like something, they send it off to a committee and kill it quietly.
I'll let it linger for years before killing it. Slow death, torture.
Yeah. So, like, when they talked about, like, recall elections, they, like, it seemed pretty clear right away that this wasn't an idea they liked, but they're like, we'll create a committee for it, we'll have some hearings, we'll talk about it for a while, and then they killed it. This thing, they were just like, no, we're killing it right now.
Yeah. I don't want to add a third seat, because often these are not competitive. If you put it at 3 seats, the chances of it just being 3, whichever 3 people could scrounge up $100 or whatever the filing fee is to get their name on the ballot, that will be who we are stuck with. I don't want to live in that world. I will take 3 Lene Palmasanos on the BET. Add 3 Lene Palmasanos. Add 3 Latricia Vitas to the BET. I would take that.
You sure? Are you sure about that last one, John?
Before taking my chances on random members of the public, I am fundamentally conservative in that way. Small C conservative. I don't like the risk of 3 random crackpots who could scrounge up $100 to get their name on the ballot being in charge of our debt and taxes. I don't like it. Steve Brand also had the idea to change the name from BET, Board of Estimate and Taxation, to Board of Debt and Taxes. So BDT? Do I have that?
Yeah, that's right. BDT. BDT would be the new acronym.
It sounds like a South Korean boy band, right? BDT?
I think it sounds like a insecticide that has been banned by the federal government.
It sounds like something that will make you infertile if people use it on your food, your produce. It does sound like that. Have we talked enough about BET, Josh?
Yeah, I think we've probably talked enough about BET.
No one is going to listen long enough because Taylor is here. We keep listening. We're not going to talk about BET anymore. Taylor is here to talk about her budding career. No one saw this coming, Taylor, as a vacant building activist.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't even planning on giving public comment at that city council meeting last week or whenever that was. I was just there to watch, but I was sitting next to Dan Suter, who was already planning to talk, and then he kind of pressured me into it.
Oh, political peer pressure. That's my favorite kind of peer pressure, is when you get shoehorned into coming to a public meeting, and then when you're there, the friend who told you, no, you won't have to talk, just be there, is like, no, get up and talk. You have to do it. Everything is riding on you getting up and talking. And then you're speaking on TV at press conferences about a vacant Burger King.
At a vacant Burger King. Yeah.
Out of it. So my question here is, when you got the direct message asking to meet us at the vacant Burger King for a press conference, did you think it was a trap?
No. No, I was like, that's a perfect spot. Because I always forget they have one over north too. And you get there and it's like, I don't know how long that one's been vacant for. I think someone said 10 years, but it's it's kind of pretty if you're into like a drive-through that's been overgrown with weeds and vines. It's kind of got a cool look to it. But that just shows how long it's been sitting there for. But I was glad they did it over there, just because so many of the vacant buildings that we have in Minneapolis, most of them are in North Minneapolis. So it was good to put some focus on that.
Well, don't shortchange South Minneapolis, because we used to have a vacant Burger King. It's probably still vacant.
No, apparently it got torn down.
Oh, it was torn down.
Someone told me it was, it's gone.
So there was a big fight about whether Burger King should be allowed to come back and reopen that. That's the difference between North and South Minneapolis. North Minneapolis is like, please just do anything with this building, please. And South Minneapolis is like, no, we don't. Burger King, just stay away. Don't reopen your drive-through. Tear it down and do something much better with it.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
So let's explain what's going on here. We're very deep into the conversation without having explained it. City is raising the annual fees on buildings that have made it onto their vacant and boarded vacant building registry. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, and they're all the ones that are on this, that like all this is focused on, are already like condemned or hazardous or nuisance in some ways. So it's not like, vacant brand new commercial things.
Right. Basically nuisance properties. So buildings that used to pay $7,000 a year, I think it's been bumped up to $24,000 a year if they don't address their issues.
Yeah, it's like a scale, which is kind of nice. So they have the ability to like work with the owner. If the owner is, showing progress, they can have lesser fines. But if the owner's not, they can gradually ramp up to the higher fines if they're just not doing anything.
And if you've shown no inclination to improve your property after 2 years, then they can ramp up these fees on you.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone been pushing against it? I'm guessing the absentee landlord, problematic landlord crowd is basically out to lunch and didn't show up
Yeah.
to the public hearing to answer for their problem
I was gonna
properties.
say, they're absentee landlords. They're not out here lobbying. They're not
engaged.
Yeah, they're not fighting it at all. No one spoke up for it.
See, David George didn't come down from whatever bell tower he's hiding in.
Someone did, this older guy did ask about like the fines at one point in the meeting, and I kind of looked over and I was like, could that be him? Because like I have no idea what he looks like, and I was like, could that have been him?
Very
Just
mysterious.
yeah, I should have like gotten a sneak picture, so I could have asked like people who have seen him, like, was that him? But probably not. He doesn't seem to care.
You have a personal connection to this issue, Taylor, right? Like, why did you get involved? Why do you care so deeply about problematic nuisance vacant properties?
I live down the street from, I have in two places now, live very close to this one that he has in Loring Park. That was 40 units. It was like, I was looking at old pictures of it that I took in like 2017. And it was like a really nice building. It was like really pretty, had these vines on it, but it was like people were living in it. So I don't know exactly when like everything went bad with it, but basically what happened in September 2022, there were 2 fires within that month because people were breaking in to seek shelter. So they would do that. One fire happened, and then they sealed the building up. And my fear when that happened, because they didn't seal it well enough. And so my fear when that happened was there was going to be another fire, and all these different methods of egress were blocked off. And so people were going to be like trapped in this burning building. And there was another fire very shortly after the first one, and someone did get hurt. They were jumping out of like the second floor to get out of the fire. So after that, it's like very like steel, like no one's getting in or out ever since then. But so then I just started like digging into like who owns this building, what's the deal, and finding that he has like 5 or 6 other buildings just like this across the city that are, in various stages of condemned, vacant, that he's just neglecting. And just the dangers of it. And, coupled with, it's the thing with tied into like, how we're sweeping encampments and people have nowhere to go. So they go to these buildings, and tied into like affordable housing, because like these buildings, they kind of bug me because they're all like 100 years old, which are typically cheaper than compared to new things, and he's just letting them rot. So it's just like, I feel like it ties into a lot of different issues that are happening in the city.
I feel like he must have had a mental break at some point. Either he got too old to manage his affairs correctly, because you're right, it's not like these were near to falling down buildings. They were fine. They were livable. People lived in them, and he just let them go for some unexplained reason, and apparently can't be convinced to sell them. Another thing that happened, people in the Wedge, and Whittier will remember this, 24th and Lyndale, one of these buildings was like 3 or 4 stories, old apartment building, just burned down. The one next to the Leaning Tower, so now there's a grassy field there. You just abandon it to the point where people took up residence in it, squatters were there, and it burned down.
It was apparently, I've heard some theories as to why that actually burned too. And it may have been related to them all getting pushed out and coming back and being retaliatory, maybe a little, and burning the building down. But I guess that one too, like that site confuses me the most because there's no building anymore. You know, he could just easily sell this vacant lot and like a ton of money. You know, so it's like that's starting fresh. So I feel like there's got to be an element of this point of just like spite. You know, like he just won't be forced into doing anything, and he's gonna do whatever he wants.
How much more is this going to keep happening? Because I think you were on to the C. David George story before that one burned down. I think the Loring Park fire happened, and you were digging into it and making noise about it. And I had even gotten an email from a person who lived next door to the 24th and Lindale building. They're like, something bad is going to happen. And I feel bad that I didn't do anything with that information. Like I didn't raise hell about it because people who live near it were predicting before it happened, something bad is going to happen here. And I don't know if raising the fees from $7,000 to $24,000 a year necessarily prevents that kind of thing from happening, but I hope so.
Wansley said it's like, this is just like the first of several different things they're working on in regards to vacant buildings. So hopefully there's a lot more tools coming that'll actually do something about it all. Or like, you know, provide further, because I do think this helps, but like, you know, the more the better.
Did anything come up at the press conference that is maybe outside of your particular area of concern that you thought was interesting? You were there as a dual participant, activist and journalist covering the press conference because you play all roles.
Yeah, it was helpful to hear just from people, the people over north that on this issue. Because, like, you know, obviously I know what's going on in this downtown area. And I, from talking to Dan Suter, we were at the previous one. I know kind of an idea what he's dealing with a single family home. So it was kind of nice that they also had Dan said to me afterwards, they kind of had like every spectrum represented. It was like single family homes, multifamily homes, and then there were several people who spoke from North who kind of represented the commercial aspect of this. So that was helpful too. We just had like a full spectrum. I don't know. I think I learned, it sounded like Councilmember Ellison said something after about that eventually the buildings can be like taken if they're just not. I don't know. I need to like research more, but I thought there was something.
To speed that up.
I agree. Like, because it's like you're just letting them decay in the meantime. Like Dan talked about the building on his block it's just going to have to be demolished because like squirrels are going in and out of it. Like it
gets to the point where you can predict something bad is going to happen. It's coming. It's going to happen soon. Something bad is going to happen. And like the city has no power to step in and say, okay, it's ours now. You made it too obvious that this was going to be a hazard to the public, to health and safety, and we need to take this away from you. I was thinking we could turn this into a national politics podcast here at the end because there's so much going on. Our elderly, semi-coherent president dropped out, and he did the heroic thing. He gave up power like General George Washington, President George Washington. That's what everyone's saying on MSNBC.
Oh.
And Kamala Harris is now going to be the Democratic nominee. Have you heard?
I have heard.
Josh, have you also heard?
Yes, I have also heard. Over the span of 36 hours, Kamala Harris was endorsed by everyone, basically. Also managed to amass enough delegates to win the nomination at the National Convention and raised an absolutely absurd amount of money, even by presidential campaign standards.
Josh, are you my mom? Because it appears you watch MSNBC religiously with giving us all those statistics.
I did not get any of that from MSNBC. I also am not your mom.
Okay. Josh Martin, not my mom. Can we get Taylor, how are you feeling about the national politics now? Are you excited about Kamala?
More so than Joe Biden. Yeah. That was really just like watching that happen. It was just like a slow decline. So yeah, I'm impressed that he actually like stepped down. I did not think it was going to happen. I honestly try not to pay attention too much to national. I find it really kind of depressing in a way that like, I prefer local politics. It's just, you can't avoid it. But yeah, Kamala more exciting than Biden.
The fate of the world is at stake. I'm at an age, there's a whole lot at stake, and this country could be ruined shortly. And I'm at an age where I have medicine that I take that is very expensive that keeps me alive. I don't know if you know that about me, but like I depend on the provision of affordable health care to stay alive because I had a blood clot earlier this year and I was hospitalized. So I'm feeling like 99% of my life, I have been able to live without any kind of medication. And now I'm at a crossroads here where I am kept alive because I can afford this healthcare, and I'm feeling very vulnerable. I'm at a vulnerable point in my life. And so I'm saying this election is about me, keeping me alive. And I'm encouraging everyone to work as hard as they can this election year to keep me alive. There is so much at stake. And most importantly, my life is at stake, I feel. Maybe not quite, but like, are either of you feeling like you've reached an age where, I don't exactly know how old either of you are, but like, I don't know, I'm getting sappy and emotional, and it's because my life is at stake here.
Yeah, same. 37. I'm 37. I think we're all probably around the same age. Yeah, healthcare stuff suddenly just became very like real to me, and yeah. And then with the election looming, it's just like, oh, I can't. Wow. Yeah. You try not to think about it and just hope for the best.
Josh, how would your life be ruined if the election goes the wrong way? Are there any particularly personal revelations you want to give us?
I am also 37. I don't have any healthcare revelations to share with all of you yet. Hopefully it'll stay that way. For me, I can't think of how things would catastrophically change for me personally. But certainly I am very committed for the future of our country and for helping out other people who are going to be negatively impacted by the results of the election, and for keeping you alive, John, to make sure that we have a president who fights for the needs of working people rather than for big corporations, and has a president who cares for people who are not just the dominant culture in America. So I'm all in for Kamala Harris. She seems to have the excitement of the party behind her, which is not something we've had in the Democratic Party for a while. So I think we're ready to win this election now.
It was amazing. The shit people were so in a panic about Joe Biden's physical and mental state, and myself included. It's like, I don't know if Kamala is a world beater, but it sure feels like it in contrast. Like she feels like the fearless, invincible leader who will lead us to victory. I was watching, so specific to the interests of this podcast, I was watching, what's that guy's name who does the City Nerd, Ray. He was doing something on Project 2025, which I was surprised to see because he's got like an urbanist focused YouTube channel. Like, how could he connect that to Project 2025? And I was shocked to learn like there's like single family home defense. Like they're going to take action against local governments who don't protect single family homes. What else were they going to do that I saw in that? Just a whole bunch of terrible transportation stuff. Like whatever your biggest fear in life is, you look at Project 2025 and it's in there. I don't care what your interests are politically. It's in there. It's going to destroy it. So I guess put in a plug for people researching Project 2025, which a lot of people are. Were you both thrown for a loop that I forced you to talk about national politics?
Yeah, without even bringing in like some kind of like local context. Like, will it be Walz as VP?
We got to have the local angle, John.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I got that picture you took of a TV that it was MSNBC, And I posted that. It was very popular of Tim Walz, except it's not Tim Walz. It's a photo of some random white Republican from Florida whose name is Waltz.
Correct.
TZ. The mainstream media doesn't know what our governor looks like.
Not a good sign.
Do either of you have recommendations for listeners? What are you enjoying aside from vacant building activism lately, Taylor? What are you taking solace in?
I've just been I was kind of trying to on Google Photos, you can track on a map where your photos are. So I was like, I'm going to try to walk all these different areas. So I'm trying to walk various neighborhoods and take a lot of photos. Or that's what I was doing for a while. So that was fun. It was like a little project, go down this street. So I've done a lot around me and kind of downtown surrounding neighborhoods. So that's my recommendation.
Take some walks, take some photos.
Yeah. Just go outside. That's probably what I said last time I was on here, but it hasn't changed.
I agree that people underestimate the therapeutic value of moving your body in the outdoors. Just get some fresh air. Take in the scenery at a slow pace. You'll feel better afterwards. Josh, do you have anything for us?
Well, while I'm all for walks, I'll give people an indoor suggestion. When I am not working on my Google Docs or following politics lately, I like to play video games, and I've recently been playing the Nintendo Switch remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
Okay. When I'm not working on my Google Docs. Josh, coming into this episode, I wanted to get you to say, what was that Larry Jacobs meme where he's closed, most popular nightclub in University of Minnesota College Town? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Can I get you to say those words? And then as a video meme, we can just insert you because you are my Larry Jacobs.
Oh, okay.
Can I get you to say those words? And I will put up next to that just random things. Every time something closes, we can put Josh on that and kind of reclaim this meme from Larry Jacobs and make it the Josh Martin meme because you're my Larry Jacobs. So can you say those famous words for me?
Closed. Most popular nightclub in a University of Minnesota college town.
Give me another take. Let's do one more take.
Closed. Most popular nightclub. Shoot. All right, we might need a third take.
Third
I
take.
biffed that one. That's for the outtakes. All right. Closed. Most popular nightclub in a University of Minnesota college town.
Okay, very good. Do you like that idea, Taylor? Do you think the Josh Martin closed meme is going to take off?
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Soup on Twitter uses it too. Anytime like a DNC thing, like a bridge is closed, it's closed, most popular nightclub. No
one thought to do a video version of the
It's
meme.
true, yeah, and it's become its own thing now. No one really remembers where it came from, so you're grounding it. Yeah, you're grounding it in its Larry Jacobs essentials.
Yeah, because more and more people are asking, I don't know if it was on Reddit or somewhere else, people ask where did that even come from? Why do people say that? We're bringing new people into local politics every day who don't understand our historic memes.
It's true.
It's a good way to end the episode. Thank you, Josh Martin, my Larry Jacobs, Wedge Live political analyst. Thank you, Taylor Dahlin, a vacant building activist who's taking this city back from absentee landlords all by herself. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now, 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 right now.